The sun hung low over the Dakota plains, bleeding red across a sky that had forgotten mercy. The wind carried the scent of gunpowder and smoke, bitter reminders of what had been lost. A woman stumbled through the dust, her bare feet slicing on the brittle grass, a white dress torn and stained with blood. She clutched a small silver locket in her hand as if it were the last thing anchoring her to life. Her name was Alara Wynne, and the world she knew was burning behind her. The air trembled with the aftershock of violence. The farmhouse where she had been raised was little more than a carcass of timber and flame. Her father's hat lay trampled in the dirt, her mother's shawl caught in a fence post like a surrender flag. Alara didn't cry. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. Each breath scraped her lungs raw. Each step pulled her further from the wreckage and closer to a horizon that promised nothing. She collapsed beneath the shadow of a well, the rope above it swaying in the hot breeze like a noose. Sweat dripped from her brow and into the dry earth. She pressed her hand to the wound on her shoulder, a clean shot through the flesh left by men who hadn't bothered to finish her off. Maybe they thought the desert would. Maybe they were right. The land around her stretched endless and cruel, its silence heavier than thunder. Far off, the echo of hooves broke that silence, steady, deliberate, approaching. She froze. Her pulse quickened. She reached for a knife lying half buried in the dirt, its blade rusted but still sharp enough to kill. She gripped it tight, knuckles whitening. The sound grew closer. Then came a voice, low, gravel-worn, unmistakably human. Didn't figure anyone left alive here. A man rode into view, his figure outlined against the dying sun. Black hat, red bandana, a revolver at his hip. The kind of man the frontier built and buried in equal measure. His horse pawed at the ground, uneasy. The man dismounted, boots crunching over charred grass. His eyes swept the scene. Ash, bodies, smoke curling from what had been a barn. Then they found her. Alara didn't speak. Her breath came shallow. He took a few slow steps closer, the wind tugging at his coat. "Easy," he said. "I ain't gonna hurt you." "Stay back," she hissed, raising the knife. Her hand trembled, but her gaze didn't waver. He stopped a few feet away, studying her like a man unsure whether to pity or fear what he saw. "You're hurt. Not dead." He nodded once. "That's something." He reached into his saddlebag. She tensed, knife ready to strike, but instead of a weapon, he tossed a canteen toward her. It hit the ground near her knee, water sloshing inside. "Drink," he said. "The heat will kill you faster than I will." She hesitated, watching him with sharp suspicion. But thirst was stronger than pride. She uncapped it and drank, the warm water burning down her throat like salvation. When she looked up again, the man had turned away, walking toward his horse. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Rowan," he said without looking back. "Used to work this stretch? Not anymore." "You were with them." The words came out as an accusation, more certain than question. His shoulders stiffened. "Not for a long time." She rose unsteadily, knife still in hand. "You helped them burn my home. I didn't light that fire." He looked at her now, eyes shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. "But I didn't stop it either." Her grip tightened. "Then why are you here?" He paused, searching for an answer that didn't exist. "Guess I wanted to see what I'd done." The silence between them stretched thin. The wind hissed through the dry grass like a warning. Finally, he mounted his horse and turned toward the fading light. "Head south," he said. "There's water 2 days from here, maybe more. Follow the stars." He spurred his horse and rode off, a lone figure swallowed by dust. Alara watched him go until he vanished into the horizon. Her body shook, not from weakness, but from rage. She looked at the knife in her hand, at the ashes behind her, and whispered, "I'll find them. All of them." The night came fast, draping the plains in shadow. Coyotes howled in the distance. She wrapped her torn dress tighter around herself and started walking. The land under her feet was blistered and cruel, but she moved with a purpose that pain couldn't break. Every step was a promise. By dawn, her legs trembled beneath her. The sun rose heavy and merciless, heat shimmering off the earth like a fever dream. She found a dry creek bed and sank to her knees, chest heaving. Her reflection shimmered faintly in a puddle of muddy water. Eyes wild, face streaked with soot. She almost didn't recognize herself. The girl who'd once braided ribbons into her hair was gone. What stared back was something harder, leaner, born of survival. A shadow fell across the ground. She looked up and saw hoof prints. Fresh, large. She turned her head and caught sight of a horse on the ridge, rider still astride. Rowan, watching her. Her first thought was fury, the second confusion. He had no reason to follow. Yet there he was, eyes unreadable beneath his hat. She wanted to shout, to demand why he hadn't just left her to die, but the words caught in her throat. Her strength was spent. The world tilted and darkened around her. When she woke, it was near sunset. A fire crackled nearby, thin smoke curling into the sky. Her shoulder had been bandaged, roughly, but enough to stop the bleeding. The scent of whiskey and gun oil filled the air. She turned her head and saw him again, crouched beside the fire, sharpening his knife. "Why?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Rowan didn't glance up. "Didn't feel right leaving you out there. I didn't ask for saving. Didn't do it for you." He sheathed the blade and stood, dusting off his hands. "You'll need to move when the sun's down. There's men still riding these parts." "Your men," she said bitterly. He met her eyes. "Not anymore." The quiet that followed was thick enough to choke on. She wanted to believe he was lying, but something in his voice, tired, hollow, told her he wasn't. He walked a few paces away, gazing out across the plains. "The West don't care what we were," he said softly. "Only what we survive." Ilara stared into the flames, the light flickering over her face. Somewhere deep inside, a part of her wanted to trust him. Another part wanted to slit his throat the moment he turned his back. Both felt right. Both felt wrong. The sky deepened to purple, the first stars appearing overhead. Rowan's horse snorted quietly nearby. He adjusted his hat, then crouched beside her one last time. "Rest while you can," he said. "Tomorrow, the real trouble starts." She watched him through half-lidded eyes, her body aching, her mind burning with questions that had no answers. The prairie whispered around them, endless and eternal. In the silence, she touched the locket again and closed her eyes. Inside it, a faded photograph, her family, smiling in a world that no longer existed. She held it tight until her knuckles whitened, then whispered to the night, "I'll make them remember your names." The fire crackled low. Rowan sat beside it, face unreadable, staring into the flames as if trying to see his own redemption in their glow. Neither spoke again. Above them, the stars watched cold and distant, and the wind carried the faint smell of smoke from the east, the scent of a past that refused to stay buried. And as darkness swallowed the plains, one truth remained. Some wounds don't bleed. They burn. The morning sun rose over the plains like a burning brand, setting the sky aflame. Ilara woke to the crackle of embers and the low murmur of wind through dry grass. Her shoulder throbbed beneath the rough bandage Rowan had tied the night before. He was sitting nearby, hat tilted low, feeding the fire with a measured calm that made her uneasy. She pushed herself up slowly, every muscle screaming in protest. The smell of dust and horse sweat hung thick in the air. Rowan glanced her way, but said nothing. A tin cup rested beside her, steam curling from it. She hesitated before taking it. The coffee was bitter, but it brought warmth back to her chest. He finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. "We move east when the light's softer. You can't be seen in the open." Her eyes narrowed. "You speak like you know who's watching." "I do," he said, "and they ain't the kind to leave loose ends." She studied him carefully, noticing the wear in his clothes, the faint scar across his jaw, the way he never sat with his back exposed. He moved like a man who'd been hunted before. "You said you weren't one of them anymore." "I'm not," he answered, "but I was." The admission landed like a stone between them. The air seemed to still. Ilara's hand tightened around the cup, and for a moment she imagined hurling it at his face. "You rode with the men who murder my family?" Rowan looked away, jaw tight. "Long time ago, before your place burned, before I knew what I'd become." That doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it wrong either, he said quietly. Out here, right and wrong get buried under the same dirt. She rose to her feet, weak but furious. You could have stopped them. I did, he said, voice flat. Too late for your kin, maybe, but I stopped the rest. Ilara turned away, trembling. Her chest burned, not just from grief, but confusion. She hated him for what he'd done, yet she couldn't deny the bandage on her shoulder or the fire that kept her alive. Hate and need were tangled in ways she didn't understand. By midday, they were riding together across the open plain. The land shimmered with heat, endless and cruel. Rowan's horse moved steady beneath them, muscles rippling under sun-darkened hide. He rode ahead, scanning the horizon with a hunter's patience. How far to water? She asked. Half a day, if we're lucky, he said. But luck don't often ride our trail. Silence followed. Only the rhythm of hooves broke it. Every so often, Ilara caught him glancing back at her, as if making sure she was still there. She wanted to ask why he bothered, but the words stayed trapped behind her teeth. By the time they reached a dry gulch, clouds had begun to gather. The air thickened, heavy with the promise of rain. Rowan dismounted and tied the horse to a mesquite branch. We'll stay here till the storm passes, he said. Thunder rolled across the plains like distant artillery. Ilara crouched beside him beneath a jutting rock. The rain came hard and fast, drenching the earth. For a moment, it felt like the world itself was trying to wash away the blood that stained it. When lightning flashed, Rowan's face was carved in silver light, tired, haunted, older than his years. Why'd you leave them? She asked softly. He took a long moment before answering. Because I couldn't stand the man I was. Thought I could outrun him. Turns out he rides fast. She met his eyes. And now, I'm just trying to do one thing right before the ground takes me. The storm passed as quickly as it came, leaving behind the sharp scent of wet soil. They built a small fire under the overhang and hung their clothes to dry. Ilara sat across from him, staring into the flames. The crackle filled the silence between them. My father used to say the land remembers everything, she murmured. Every hoofprint, every drop of blood. You can't bury what's been done. Rowan nodded slowly. Maybe, but you can learn to walk over it without sinking. His words lingered in the air, heavy with truth she didn't want to accept. Night fell. The fire burned low, shadows stretching long across the gulch walls. Ilara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's hands reaching through the smoke, her father's voice shouting her name. She turned toward Rowan, who sat awake, knife in hand, sharpening it against a stone. You don't rest much, do you? She asked. Rest's for men without enemies, he said. Who hunts you? He gave a humorless smile. The same men who burned your life down. Carter Vane's crew. I left them with less gold and more reason to hate me. Her heartbeat quickened. Then they'll come for you. They'll come for both of us, he said simply. A flicker of fear crossed her face. He saw it. You can still leave. Head south to the river. Find a wagon train. She shook her head. No, if they come, I want to face them. Bravery don't suit everyone, he warned. Neither does running, she shot back. He smirked slightly. Maybe you ain't as soft as you look. Maybe you ain't as heartless as you act, she replied. For a heartbeat, they held each other's gaze, the air between them alive with something fragile and dangerous. Then a distant sound shattered it. Hooves pounding, faint but growing. Rowan stiffened, instantly, hand going his gun. Up, he whispered. Now! They scrambled to their feet. 3 riders appeared on the ridge, silhouettes against the moonlight. Rowan cursed under his breath. Vane scouts. He pushed her toward the rocks. Stay low. Don't shoot unless you have to. The first shot rang out before he finished. Sparks flew from the rock beside her head. Rowan returned fire, 2 sharp blasts echoing through the canyon. One rider toppled from his horse, the others fanning out in the dark. Ilara pressed against the ground, heart hammering, the metallic taste of fear on her tongue. Then she saw movement, a man circling behind Rowan, rifle raised. Without thinking, she snatched Rowan's spare pistol from his saddlebag. The weapon felt cold, heavy in her grip. "Rowan," she cried. He turned. Too late. She fired. The gun kicked hard against her palm. The man fell. Smoke hung in the air, acrid and thick. For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the distant cry of a night bird. Rowan turned to her, eyes unreadable. "You ever shot a man before?" She swallowed hard. "No. Now you have," he said. The last rider fled into the darkness. Rowan reloaded his gun with slow, deliberate movements. "They'll be back," he said. "Next time, there'll be more." Ilara looked down at the body near her feet, the pistol trembling in her hand. The man couldn't have been much older than her. A life traded for survival. She felt no triumph, only a hollow ache deep in her chest. Rowan rested a hand on her shoulder. "You did what you had to." She didn't look up. "That's what they said before they burned my home." He said nothing. The fire crackled between them, casting their shadows against the canyon wall, two shapes bound by circumstance, both scarred, both hunted. When dawn came, the sky blazed gold over the plains. Rowan saddled the horse in silence, while Ilara buried the dead with shaking hands. As she covered the last mound of dirt, she whispered a prayer that didn't feel like forgiveness. They rode on without a word. The horizon stretched endless ahead, but the silence between them had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with what they'd become. The dawn came cold and gray, the kind that scraped through the lungs like dust and regret. The fire had long since died, leaving only the soft hiss of embers beneath a pile of ash. Sarah sat motionless beside them, her rifle across her knees, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as if she could will the sun to rise faster. Every sound in the stillness, every shift of wind or whisper of leaves, felt like a memory crawling out of the dark. She'd slept little, haunted by the echo of her brother's last breath and the flicker of Eli's eyes when he said, "We're not done yet." Eli stirred beside the wagon, his hand pressed to his shoulder where the bandages were dark with dried blood. The wound had slowed him, but not stopped him. His jaw was set hard, his silence heavier than iron. When he rose, he moved like a man carrying ghosts, steady, deliberate, dangerous. "Tracks will be clear now," he said, voice rough with sleep and pain. "They'll have circled south. Means they're waiting for us at the pass." Sarah didn't look at him. "Then we go through the canyon." Eli spat into the dirt. "Canyon suicide. One way in, no way out if they corner us." She turned then, her eyes sharp as flint. "We don't have a choice." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt stretched thin, like a wire ready to snap. Eli finally nodded, though it was clear he didn't agree. He kicked sand over the ashes, checked his revolver, and climbed into the saddle. The horses were restless, picking up on something unspoken, the scent of violence lingering ahead. The canyon opened before them like a wound in the earth, carved deep and narrow, its walls streaked with the reds and ochres of centuries. The wind funneled through it, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder and sage. Every hoofstep echoed too loud. Every creak of leather seemed to betray their position. Eli rode ahead, eyes scanning the ridges. "You see something moves, don't wait to ask. Just shoot." Sarah's hands tightened on the reins. "I'm not you, Eli." "Didn't say you were." They pressed on in silence, shadows crawling along the rock walls like phantoms. The canyon twisted sharply, and that's when she saw it, the glint of sunlight on metal. "Eli!" The shot cracked through the air, ricocheting off the stone. Eli's horse reared, screaming. He hit the ground hard, rolling for cover as a second bullet smashed into the rock beside his head. Sarah dove behind a boulder, her breath ragged. More shots followed, echoing like thunder trapped in stone. "3 of them," Eli shouted. "Maybe 4. Sarah peeked out, saw one on the ridge, a silhouette framed by dust and sun. She aimed, exhaled, and squeezed. The man jerked back, his rifle clattering down the slope. Another shot whistled past her ear, close enough to sting. "Keep their heads down." Eli barked, returning fire. It was chaos. The deafening crack of rifles, the scream of ricochets, the acrid sting of powder in her throat. The canyon seemed to close around them, turning the air thick with smoke and echo. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears. She felt every beat like a drum calling her deeper into the fight. Then silence. Eli crouched low, listening. Dust drifted from the cliffs above, glowing in the light. He motioned her to stay put and crept forward, his revolver steady. That's when the shadow moved. A man lunged from behind a rock, blade flashing. Eli twisted. Too slow. The knife slashed across his side. He grunted, slammed his elbow back, and drove the attacker into the stone. The struggle was vicious, desperate. Eli's face twisted in pain, but he didn't yield. Sarah fired once. The man dropped, eyes wide, mouth frozen in shock. The echo of the shot hung between them like a ghost refusing to leave. Eli sagged to one knee, blood dripping from his ribs. Sarah was beside him in an instant, pressing her hand to the wound. "Don't you dare," she whispered, voice shaking. "Not after all this." He looked up at her, eyes weary but alive. "Ain't planning on it." They sat there for a moment, surrounded by silence, the canyon swallowing their words. Above them, a hawk circled, its cry cutting through the still air. When Eli finally stood, he nodded toward the far end of the canyon. "We're close. Burns camps beyond that ridge." Sarah helped him mount, and together they rode through the narrowing passage, each turn bringing them closer to the man who destroyed everything they'd known. The camp lay in a hollow, half hidden by scrub and smoke. 3 men stood near the fire, rifles slung loose, and among them Jed Burns. His hat tilted back, a cigar in his mouth, he looked as calm as if the world had already bent to his will. Sarah's pulse quickened. The memory of her brother's blood, of the flames consuming their home, surged like wildfire. Eli met her gaze. "You sure you want to do this?" She didn't answer. She swung down from the horse, leveled her rifle, and stepped into the open. "Burns." Her voice rang out like a bell, cracking the stillness. "You took my family. Now I'm taking yours." The men turned, startled. Burns grinned, slow and cruel. "Well, I'll be damned." The little ghost finally crawled out of the ashes. The first shot came from him. She ducked, returned fire. Eli joined her, his revolver barking flame. The fight was fast, brutal, no time to think. Only move, aim, survive. One man fell, then another. Burns retreated behind the fire, reloading. Sarah advanced, step by step, smoke stinging her eyes. Her rifle clicked empty. She drew Eli's spare revolver, the weight heavy but familiar. Burns fired again, the bullet grazing her arm. She didn't stop. He sneered, backing toward the edge of the ridge. "You think killing me'll fix it? That it'll stop the burn inside you?" Sarah's voice was steady. "No, but it'll quiet it." She fired once. Burns staggered, eyes wide with disbelief, then fell into the fire's glow, swallowed by the smoke and flame he'd always carried with him. When it was over, she stood, trembling, the revolver shaking in her hand. The world was silent again, save for the crackle of fire and the wind sighing through the canyon. Eli approached, wincing. "You did it." She looked at him, tears glinting through the dust. "No, Eli, we did." He smiled faintly. "Some wounds don't bleed," he said. "They burn." The words lingered as the sky deepened to gold and the first stars bled through. They buried the dead beneath the cold earth, marked only by silence and wind. When they rode away, the flames behind them flickered low, like an ending finally earned. And as the horizon swallowed them, Sarah felt something she hadn't in years, a strange, fragile peace. The frontier still stretched endless and cruel before them, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it, because the fire inside her no longer consumed, it guided,